Welcome back to Core Motivations Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Conley. I'm a certified Enneagram coach and a Symbis marriage coach. If it's your first time with us, so glad you found us. And for those returning listeners, I couldn't be more happy that I get to share more and continue to journey with you. So, last week we explored a few things such as uh, patience as we learn new things, concepts, including new rhythms and patterns. We talked about filling up our toolbox. So far, you should have in there your I ams list, your gratitude practice, and ways to show up for yourself. How are some of these practices showing up for you in life the past few weeks? What do you find is your new go to? Gratitude has probably been the biggest success this week for me, even though last week, well, last week for me it didn't go very well. I know it always doesn't pan out the way you and I might have hoped to see or experience, but try again. All right, we're about to talk about gratitude. Wouldn't you know it? I got called to jury duty. This week, I learned that being grateful and praying for favor doesn't always come the way you might expect it, or at least the way I might have expected it. I was also reminded about something called divine appointments. Not sure if you know what that is, but I believe those to be a real thing. You see, it's those meetings that God purposed for you to go to, but you didn't know about that. And there are encounters with someone that you usually get to experience something that is good and a blessing in some way. So, jury duty. Did you just give a big sigh or a grumble? Or are you one of those people that get really excited about the prospects of being on a jury duty or in a trial or something to that effect? Well, truth be told, I didn't want to go to jury duty. And yeah, believe me, I prayed every day since I received that notice that God would give me favor and my number wouldn't be called or something crazy, not crazy bad, but just crazy and unpredictable would happen, making it possible for me to not attend. But of course, as required by the instructions, you have to call in the day before, which I did. And yep, you guessed it. My number was on the you need to appear, you need to go be there right now. Well, not right in that moment, but the next morning. 8:15 I had to be there, which was kind of a big deal. So I went. I mean, I didn't really have a choice. I keep hearing something about it being my civic duty and all, but I don't know, that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But the truth is that it is a real thing, it's a real statement. And at the time, I didn't agree. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do it. And I was certain that I had asked for favor from God and that my favor was that I wouldn't have to go. Anywho, so there I am, waiting in line to check in. When walking in my direction, I see this person from my not so distant past, and they get in the line. You see, this person played a vital role in my growth the last few years. And that person was there in the same place I was. That place that it just didn't make sense or match what I believed I was supposed to be doing instead. So, yeah, crazy. The last place I would expect to run into this person. That's what I'd like to call divine appointment. Just saying. So, while we didn't really get to dive deep into what we had been doing for the last year as we lost connection with each other, that thing called life and all that entails, we were still able to share a few things. And if I would not have gone, I would not have shared some exciting things that are happening in my life. One being this podcast, and the other, well, I'll reveal that at a later date. So, back when I used to visit with this person regularly, they played a big role of encouraging me to meet and reach certain goals in my life. And getting to share about this podcast really meant a lot to me. I know, this is a long story that keeps going on and on and on, but we're talking about utilizing the gratitude practice. Well, also, what practices maybe work for you? So, back to my experience with jury duty. So, after getting grouped up with the 50 other jurors, now keep in mind there were over 475 jurors that were there to show up. We are climbing several flights of stairs up, our numbers being arranged, climbing uh, all these different levels in this building multiple times, eventually being brought into the courtroom where the lawyers and the judge they go they determine who will be selected for this trial. So several questions later, including the first 5 questions that the judge asks, one being a citizen, are you the right age, that sort of thing. And the judge asked, "Are you fit to be here on the jury?" And one of the 5 questions that was asked is, "Have you had a felony in the last 15 years?" Well, it's kind of quiet for half a second, and a man raises his hand and he says, "I told the ladies downstairs I wasn't supposed to be here, but yeah, I have a felony." To which the judge promptly dismissed the man who was carrying his mini chihuahua with him. What a sight that was. So, a few questions later, I had to share my reasons why I couldn't commit to a trial. A few minutes later, after a quick step out with the judge and the lawyers, they came back in. And I have to say that while I'm very grateful that I got excused from jury duty during the question aspect from the judge, I walked away thinking about how interesting it would have been to experience a trial for the first time in my experience with being called to be on a jury. I wasn't afraid. I was actually excited about the prospects. Um, and the truth is that if I didn't have to fly out of state, I think I would have really enjoyed that process and experience. So during the waiting, there, and believe me, there was a lot of waiting. They showed a couple of videos, and these videos, they were filled with the what to expect, things to do, things to know, things not to do, and of course, a few other things, blah, blah, blah. But what stood out for me was the importance we can play as a vital part in some people's lives by helping to make decisions. Decisions that have a deeper impact, one of which we may never even know the outcome of. The other interesting thing I learned from this experience was about unconscious bias. Have you heard of that? Well, unconscious bias, also known as implicit bias, involves automatic and unintentional attitudes, beliefs, and stereotypes that affect understanding, actions, and behaviors towards individuals or groups. These biases operate outside of conscious awareness, and can influence decisions, behaviors, and interactions, even if they contradict stated beliefs and values. And they're rooted in background, personal experience, societal stereotypes, and cultural norms. So says Google. Some other notables about unconscious bias is that our brain is wired to make quick judgment based on patterns and past experiences that reside deep in the subconscious, such as favoring people similar in interests or backgrounds and experiences, or forming a negative impression based on a single negative trait, adjusting views to align with those of a group to gain acceptance, even gender bias favoring one gender over another, or making assumptions about gender roles and gender stereotypes. Some places that we might have experienced or seen unconscious bias are in the workplace or even healthcare that have to do with medical procedures and treatment, and even our personal life. Maybe you could think of more instances where you have experienced unconscious bias. So, just a little bit of information on top of that is that I am sure that some of you are thinking, I have never or would never have a bias, especially an unconscious one. And yet, studies show that 90 to 95% of people have exhibited unconscious biases based on things like race, ethnicity, and other factors. So basically, it can affect all people. It is a natural part of how our brains work. So, why talk about this? Well, it relates directly to the way we perceive our core fear, our core desire, our core weakness, and our core longing. These are our motivations. And it can affect the way we see others when we don't understand what their core motivations are. But when we understand motivations about ourselves and others, we can provide and hold space for ourselves and others. It gives us that opportunity where we can show up for them, have them show up for us. And of course, the big one, showing up for ourselves. So let's just call that grace. Now, I'm not talking about the person grace. I'm talking about grace, which in the Hebrew word, it's pronounced chen, meaning acceptance and goodwill, regardless of whether we've earned it. So there is the grace that God gives us, even though we don't truly deserve it. But because of his deep love for us, he's bestowed it upon us. But then there is the grace we extend, like choosing to not respond in an unkind way when someone is rude, by being present when a person is in need of support, forgiveness even when we think that person doesn't deserve it, and understanding that each person, even the worst person, is doing the best she or he is capable of at that moment with the resources that are available. This includes the grace we show ourselves. I really hope you stick around to the end where we will add to our toolbox of new self care and self love practices and rhythms. So, are you ready to learn more about core motivations? Well, good. You came to the right place. Let's move forward. As we continue to navigate the Enneagram, please note that the information shared in this podcast is not meant to be used as an official typing session. That's why you are being recommended. I am recommending that you find a coach And furthermore, if you need recommendations on who to coach with, I'd be glad to connect you with one. You can either coach with me, or I'm part of a network where I can help get you matched up with someone that speaks your particular language. And I don't mean, English versus Spanish or German. I mean just the way in which you think and process, and matching that with the right person. Later on, we will have a guest or two in future episodes. So we'll be able to look at what that's like to go through a typing experience and have that actual session. I am really looking forward to sharing that with you because it's really interesting and fascinating, and it's a good way to dive deep in such a short period of time on what motivates a person. So, you remember last week when we talked about core fear? Core fear described as what a person is always running away from, avoiding, and trying to prevent from happening. It's that deep inside, we can believe that it is vital to our well being and to avoid the thing we fear. So, before we move forward with core desire, which is part of our core motivations, I want to remind you of each type and how we lovingly refer to each type. So here they are. Type 1, the moral perfectionist, aka the reformer. Type 2, the helper, aka the giver. Type 3, successful achiever, aka the pragmatic. Type 4, romantic individualist, aka the originalist. Type 5, investigator thinker, aka the quiet specialist. Type 6, the loyal guardian, aka the loyalist. Type 7, entertaining optimist, aka the enthusiast. Type 8, protective challenger, aka the maverick. And finally, type 9, the peaceful mediator, aka the harmonizer, aka the connector, and aka the preservationist. So, just a quick reminder, knowing these motivations is to help understand where a person is coming from. These are what motivates a person towards their why they are doing what they're doing. This is not about judgment, it's about understanding. And I can't stress this enough. This understanding of core motivations is about meeting people where they are in regards to these motivations, showing up for them and yourself, and giving grace as we navigate our world and community. And of course, as we understand and operate as an individual. So, in short, understanding our core motivations helps guide towards knowing your why. Okay, onward. Core desire. It's what a person is always striving for and believing will bring them complete fulfillment. It's a fundamental unconscious yearning that drives a person's behavior. So, as always, we're going to start with type 1, the moral perfectionist. Their core desire is having integrity, being good, balanced, accurate, virtuous, and right. They strive for higher and improve everything, to be consistent with their ideas and to justify themselves. So, again, it's about integrity, being good, balanced, and accurate. So, type 2, theirs is pretty straightforward and simple. Type 2, the helper. They're about being appreciated, loved, and wanted. And type 3, the successful achiever. They're about having a high status and respect, being admired, successful, and valued. Whereas the type 4, the romantic individualist, they're about being unique, special, and authentic. Type 5, the investigator thinker, ooh, that's a hard one. They're about being capable and competent. Where type 6, the loyal guardian, they're about having security and guidance and support. Type 7, the entertaining optimist, this will be a big surprise. And here we go, optimist. They're about being happy, fully satisfied, and content. That's the type 7. And type 8, they're the protective challenger. So they're about protecting themselves and others from harm, particularly in regards to injustice and to maintain control over their lives. And finally, type 9, the peaceful mediator. They're about having inner stability and peace of mind. So let's just review because this is a lot of information. Core fear and core desire. Core desire of each type, it looks a little something different, like the following. So, again, just a reminder, type 1, the moral perfectionist, their core fear is being bad, corrupt, and ultimately unworthy. Where, in contrast, their core desire is to be free from condemnation. So interesting. Their fear is being bad, corrupt, and ultimately unworthy, where they really fear, they want to be free from, excuse me, their desire is to be free from condemnation. So let's look at type 2, just as a reminder here. Type 2, the helper. Their core fear is being unlovable, where their desire is to be loved. So they fear that they're unlovable, but their desire is to be loved. I hope you're finding this as fascinating as I am when you see those things together. Type 3, the successful achiever. Their core fear is failure and being without value, with whereas their desire is to use the most special parts of themselves to be of value to others. So they fear failure and not being valued or without value, but their desire is to be used in the most possible special part of themselves as they're of value to others. Okay, so type 4, the romantic individualist. Their their core fear is being inadequate, emotionally cut off, plain, mundane, defective, and flawed, and even insignificant. Where their desire, and listen to these things, is to be unique, special, and authentic, and to be authentically oneself. So again, their fear is to be inadequate, emotionally cut off, plain, mundane, defective, flawed, or insignificant, where their desire is to uh, be unique and special and authentic, ultimately, to be authentically themselves. I don't know about you if you're seeing these connections yet, but when I see them lined up together like this, it makes so much sense how the core fear of the things that they're afraid of happening is also when you spin it to a positive side, it's also their desire. So type 5, the investigative thinker, their core fear is being annihilated, invaded, or not existing, being thought of as incapable or ignorant, having obligations placed upon them, and their energy being completely depleted. And on the positive spin of that, their core desire is to be seen as capable and competent. even though they fear having obligations placed upon them or invaded or not existing. So fascinating. Type 6, the loyal guardian. So their core fear is fearing fear itself. So being without support, security, guidance, or being blamed, targeted, alone, or physically abandoned. Where on the opposite side, their core desire is to have security, guidance, and support. So they fear being alone and physically abandoned and being without support. They're very, you know, fearful of these things, and yet their desire is having security, guidance, and support. So, type 7, the entertaining optimist. Their core fear is being deprived and trapped in pain or boredom. And a core desire is being happy, fully satisfied, and content. In fact, to find satisfaction for themselves is a core desire. Type 8, the protective challenger. Their core fear is being weak, vulnerable, and harmed, or being controlled by others. And on the opposite, their core desire is to be self reliant and protect oneself from harm. So they don't want to be, they're afraid of being controlled and harmed or vulnerable, but they also want to be seen as self reliant and protect. Their desire is to protect oneself from harm themselves. And so the final one, type 9, peaceful mediator, their core fear is of the fear of loss and separation, where their desire is to be connected to the world, having inner stability and peace of mind. So they fear being lost and separated, fear of loss and separation, right? And the core desire is to be connected to the world and having inner stability and peace of mind. I hope you're enjoying learning about the Enneagram. I'm looking forward to sharing more about each individual Enneagram type, a sort of getting to know ya as a type 1, 2, and so on, all the way to type 9. So keep tuning in each week as we build on our knowledge of each type and the motivations and the different aspects of what build on making or developing or exposing each type's why. So let's move on to a new practice, or maybe better fit, we should call it a rhythm of life. So sometimes showing self care and self love is doing something for others. So, with that, a new tool for our toolbox is grace. Grace meaning courteous, goodwill, mercy, pardon, a special favor, privilege, adorn, embellish, disposition to or an act or instance, temporary exemption, reprieve, a charming or attractive trait or characteristic, a blessing or giving thanks, and finally, the quality or state of being considerate or thoughtful. So, showing grace means extending kindness, understanding, forgiveness to yourself and others, even when mistakes are made or challenges arise. It involves being patient and offering support and recognizing that everyone is dealing with their own difficulties. So, for today, we'll use the following 5 attributes for grace as characteristics. So the characteristics of grace, and we're going to use grace as an acronym specifically through these 5 attributes. So G is for generosity, R is for respect, A is for action, C is for compassion, and E is for energy. So grace, so G is for generosity, meaning the will to do something more for others. And if you're a note taker, write down at the top of your page, either across or long ways, and write the word grace and leave some space. And for the first letter in grace, G, it's for generosity. And I'll tell you what it says about generosity again. It means the will to do something more for others. And the R in grace is for respect. It's the dignity of life and work. R is respect, the dignity of life and work. The A in grace is for action, the mechanism for change. A is the action, the mechanism for change. And the C in grace, C is for compassion, the concern for others. C is for compassion, the concern for others. And then E in grace, E is energy, the spirit that catalyzes us. E is energy, the spirit that catalyzes us. So here's some examples of generosity. And we can do that when we offer support. So here's some examples. Be a source of comfort and encouragement to those who need it. Express gratitude. Recognize and appreciate the good things in your life and the people who support you. That's an example of generosity. So here's an example of respect. Choose your words wisely. Speak with kindness and consideration, even when you're feeling frustrated or angry. Offer an apology. Take responsibility for your actions and sincerely apologize. And here's some examples of action. Look for opportunities. Simple everyday tasks, they can go a long way towards appreciation. Remember your P's and T's. Remember, a please and or a thank you stays with a person. And a smile, don't need to explain that unless your face is frozen with a frown. So maybe consider that there is no better time than right now to thaw that frown. And also, we can hold a door open because chivalry is not dead. And then finally, sweet treats. You can bring me chocolate. I mean, bring a person their favorite treat. So, examples of compassion. And remember, these are each aspects of grace. Examples of compassion. Remember that everyone is doing the best that they can. And we need to try to understand that people's actions may be influenced by factors beyond their control. They may be acting out of their Enneagram fear and not even know it. We also need to remember everyone has a story and is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And we can also take interest in others, learn about other people, ask them questions, listen, and be present. And then finally, examples of energy. Teach someone a self care practice, share the gratitude practice, share the I ams, and learn it together. We can show energy through positive social interactions. We can connect with someone, and it doesn't have to be a new person, but rather a way to renew a relationship. We can show energy through activity, sports, nature, art, dance, exercise. Consider this as a way to feel and share grace. This is something you can do with your favorite person, or maybe this is something that you could do with somebody new. I also want to show some love to author Don Kling for some of the examples of grace. So thank you, Don. So here's a bonus acronym of the GRACE tool. Are you ready for it? GRACE as in gratitude, reciprocity, altruism, choice, and enjoyment. So GRACE as in gratitude, reciprocity, altruism, choice, and even enjoyment. And so as we end our time together, curiosity is building up. Are you noticing patterns or connections as you learn about each type? What's something that's sticking out for you? What sticks out? I would really, really love to hear about it. So look on my Instagram page, Core Motivations _coach, for the following prompt. In a couple words, post in response to what we learned during our time on Core Motivations podcasts. So here's the question. What sticks out? What would you highlight as you learn about the Enneagram Core Motivations? I'll go first. What sticks out for me is understanding core motivations as I identify my unique self. So core motivations to me helps me understand my unique self. And then of course identifying my why. Mel Robbins said so eloquently when she said, "There will always be someone who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you." So now some quick legal stuff. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and it does not constitute professional advice. The podcast is not a substitute for medical care, and the materials, videos, or books referred to in this podcast are recommendations only. The views expressed by our guests are their own and not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast host. That's me or sponsors. Join me each week as we dive into all things Enneagram, self care ideas, self love patterns and rhythms, share ideas from other reputable authors, doctors, and my favorite podcasters. I just want to say a special thank you to you for being with me today on Core Motivations Podcast. And you can find me, Michelle, on Instagram at Core Motivations _coach. You can also send me an email at Michelle at coremotivationscoach.com. I would love for you to give a follow and share this episode because that's how people find us. You can scroll down to the end of the podcast and leave a review. That way, people on Spotify and Apple Podcast and Amazon Music and other formats there, people can find us. They can see where we're at and join us in this on this journey. So again, thank you for being here. And until next time, and as always, I'm rooting for you.